Hi guys. So welcome to week 8, and in this week we are going to be dealing with introduction to UX and design thinking. Oh, I spelled this wrongly. Introduction to UX and design thinking. So while I was going through this course, I just learned that we covered majorly the first part of this week in our previous weeks. So while we're talking about UI and UX, I learned like everything we're supposed to cover in this other week. We've already covered, explaining what UX is and everything that pertains to it in this our course. So with that being said, we are just going to skip this because it's going to be a repetition of what we've done before in our previous week. So just in case you missed that, you need to like go back and watch the previous videos, right? So in this video, we're just going to deal with design thinking, and it's not going to be a long video because we are just trying to cover the basic and keep this as simple and easy as possible for us, right? So we're going to be looking at design thinking in this week now. So the design thinking process, right? A structured yet flexible approach to problem solving. So when we say design thinking, of course, it has to do with design, and then thinking, it has to do with your process, your thought process, what you actually do in coming up with your designs here, the process of achieving or arriving at your final designs. So as product designers or UI UX designers, you don't just jump into your design tool and then start designing. Let's say you want to design for a banking app, a mobile banking app. You don't just go to Figma or Adobe XD or whatever the tool is that you are using for your design and start designing. There are stages and there are process of all of this. There are stages and processes that you go through to attain to your final designs, and that's why we tagged it design thinking process, right? So the first is you empathize. Now, I mentioned this over and over at our earlier videos and even the introduction to this course, that you are designing for a user, right? You are designing for a user. So you need to know the person you are designing for. You need to know that user because people are different. We have different user personalities. So Mr. A might not like what Mr. B likes. Mr. B might not like what Mr. A like. That is not your problem. Your problem is to know which user are you designing for. Are you designing for Mr. A or are you designing for Mr. B? So there are processes that you need to follow to even know that user, right? So to empathize, you need to understand user needs. So how do you even get to understand the user needs? You carry out some actions like interviews. You carry out literal interview actions where you need to sit with some users that fall into the category of your user personnel that you are going to be designing for, right? So you have literal interviews with those users. It could be like a one-on-one interview or other forms of interview where you would draw out informations from them and you would get a lot of feedback. So you can just get a lot of data just from user interviews. And then the next thing you can do is also observation, because we are trying to empathize, and to empathize we are trying to understand the user needs, and to understand the user needs we will carry out interviews, right? So after interview, the next is observations. You also observe how users interact with applications and platforms that are even similar to the solutions you're trying to provide, right? And then you also carry out surveys. There are times that you would just prepare surveys and share to people, just so that you understand the user you are trying to design for. Maybe you are trying to design a mobile app that helps students to let's say set up reminders, or to study, or just activities that is around them studying in school and helping them become better as students. So you can prepare a survey and share for students in a particular school, just so that you can get feedback. And all that you are doing is so you would understand the user, and in understanding the user, it will help you build you empathize, right? So you would really know the person you are designing for and how you can move forward to that. And then after that, now you've done your interview, observation, surveys, and all that. The next thing is you define synthesis findings into a clear problem statement. Now let's say let's move to another app, right? So let's say you want to now design an app for a mobile banking platforms, right? And then you did carry out some interviews before. You ask people their experience using their current applications, their current banking applications, and then they give you feedback. Now if you are very careful, among their feedbacks, they would give you some of their frustrations, some of their pain points, their problems, some things that they dislike, and then the things they like. Now, from all of that feedback, you could carve out a problem statement. You could identify some problem on the existing banking tools, the platforms that they use to do their mobile banking, right? So when you carve out that, you now state, you clearly define that problem, because we are designing to solve a problem. The goal of your design is to solve a particular kind of problem. Now you can't provide solution to things that you don't know what the problem is, right? So you need to first of all identify that problem. So you see the stages we're taking. You've done your interviews, you've had interactions, you've done your surveys, and from that surveys, that data, you begin to analyze and extract the data, and then you now begin to define what exactly is the problem. You would see people vetting out their frustrations and their anger, probably on the existing application or the similar tools that they are using. So you will clearly state what the problem is. This is not peculiar to just a mobile app or whatever. It could be like a website you are trying to design. You need to just know exactly what the problem is. It could be a new design, it could be a redesign you get of an existing website. You don't just go and say, oh, start making the UI look more beautiful. It goes beyond that. The UX aspect of it is trying to know what is the problem with the current site. What is the site lagging? Are they having drop-offs where users will visit the site, signing up, and then they get to stage 1, stage 2, and then they leave it, they drop off? You need to clearly define the problem and put it well in a problem statement now. So when you've done that, the next thing is to ideate. And to ideate is to brainstorm multiple solutions. Now you've done your interviews, you've done your research, you've clearly stated the problem statement, and then you start brainstorming. Brainstorming is looking for doing your research and then looking for multiple ways that you could bring a solution to that problem, multiple ways you could solve a problem. You would not just come up with one way. There are times that you need to come up with an alternative, so that you would compare the both. Maybe if you get to the next stage of testing, and then you get people's feedback on the both approach you have that you've brainstormed to solve a particular problem, and then you get feedback on the best one to go with. So brainstorming is you just trying to figure out, oh, how do I solve this problem? People are dropping off from this website. What exactly is the issue? Is it that the forms are too long? You get, the forms might be too much sometimes on some applications that it will just overwhelm the user. The user is just getting to sign up and you're asking the user for your BVN, you're asking the user for NIN, for some key confidential informations and data from them, and they might not be too okay or comfortable to share. So most times what you do is, oh, why don't I just take out this critical data I need from them and push it to the KYC section, right? So when users are signing up, let's just get their basic information, and then when they want to start carrying out some critical tasks in the application, they need to upgrade. So they've trusted us, they've been with us, and then they now need to submit some more information about themselves, identity, so that we could verify them and then give them access to more features. So that way you see users are comfortable using your platform, users are relaxed. They are relaxed, not just the first time opening the app, sign up, put your name, and the next thing, oh, I need your BVN and all that. So all of these are like part of brainstorming. You try to come up with multiple solutions to a particular problem, and then when you are done with that stage, the next stage of your design thinking process is to come up with prototypes. Yeah, you've done your interviews and research, you've defined what the problem is, you've brainstormed multiple solutions to it, you have everything on paper now, you have all the data and information you need to get to work. And part of it is to start creating those designs and prototype. You need to bring that your solution to life. Yeah, it's not just saying, oh, I've known the solution to this, I'm going to do this and do that. Now, prototyping is the time for you to bring that your design to life, and that's your solution to life. So you create quick mock-ups or low fidelity models. I know you guys are familiar with these terms now because we've treated that extensively. We've seen mock-ups and low fidelity models. We've done some exercise on them. So when you're done brainstorming, this is the next stage. You create this low fidelity mockups, your solution, you try to give it life. That onboarding screen, you will design it, the sign up, the login, the purchase screen, you will design it, the catalog, and all that. You would prototype your solution and give it life. Now, after you've done that, the next thing, of course, is to now test to see if your solution is a solution indeed, if it's working, right? So you go for testing, and in the process of, there are several ways you could test. One of it is you could do a prototype and share it with people, and then just see how people will get their experience. People should go through it, go through the flows. Maybe you are trying to target some module, some particular flows that you want to test, or if it is an entire app that you have built or a site you've designed completely, you prototype and you want to share, so user will go through it and get a feel of the product and then give you a feedback. It's a good thing also that you can do. And there are some live testing that are actually cool, where you would give a user the app on their phones to test, and you are there live watching them, seeing their expression in their face, hearing what they are saying, their reaction, knowing how long it takes them to perform a particular task. So you just do the testing that you need to do. And then after that testing, you gather feedbacks, right? When you gather feedbacks, now this would now prompt you to either refine, because sometimes you do a solution for a particular problem, and after your testing you discover that the solution is actually good. As a matter of fact, that is the best solution, but you need to change something, you need to refine, you need to make it better. Just do a little tweaking and it will be perfect. So testing gives you that exposure if there is a need for refining, right? You refine and then you repeat if needed. So there are some times that probably the solution you provided is not good, doesn't solve the problem. you repeat. So repeat is you going back to this step C. You're not really going back to the interviews, not necessarily in most cases. You're not going back to clear problem statement. You already know the problem. You are just stuck at the perfect solution for it. So you go back to this step, right? You brainstorm again multiple solutions, and then you create other prototypes again, and then you take it for testing. Now you keep repeating this cycle until everything is cool, right? So sometimes you might be done with the brainstorming and you just start repeating from the mock-ups. Maybe your mock-ups are not really good and the interactions are lagging and have some, maybe they need some refining or some upgrades. You'll be stuck at this circle, and when you are done with this, you get feedback until you are done, right? Until you are done with it. So these are just like the basic design thinking process that we need to know, beginner levels. Like I said, we want to keep the video very simple and short so that people would understand and we can start making use of this little thing I've said in this short time is essential, is key. You can't jump any of the step. It is very, very important. If you want to start your design, you would need to, of course, understand the user needs. You need to clearly define the problem statement. You need to brainstorm multiple solutions. You need to come up with prototypes and create quick mock-ups for it. And then you need to do a testing. And then when you get feedback, you know if you need to refine, if you need to repeat, or you need to move forward. So the key principle here is interactive, not linear. You can always loop back. So like looping is a repetition, right? So like I told us, when you get to this stage, if there's a need, you need to loop back, meaning you need to go back to brainstorming other alternative solutions to it, and then you go down the steps again. So this is basic design thinking process that you need to follow, right? So we're going to look at the tools to support UX design thinking, right? So the first is empathy map. So what is empathy map? Empathy map captures what users think, feel, see, say, and do, right? So this is like an example of an empathy map. Now, but you would make sure the map is properly drafted, because you would be putting down some notes in each of the maps, right? So if you have a user, you need to understand what the user says, what the user thinks, what the user does, and what the user feels. So the sales quadrant contains what the user says out loud in an interview or some other usability study. Ideally, it contains verbatim and direct quotes from research, right? So these are like the verbal things that the users would say literally out. You need to jot it down, because most or some of them would be very, very relevant to the project and the product you are designing. So these are just like some example of, you see what some users can say. I want something reliable. I don't understand what to do from here. You get, so when you build a product, this could probably be in testing stage, and then you give the user to test the product, and maybe the user is filling a form and the user gets stuck in one place, and some users can verbally say these things. So you put all this down under, say, in your empathy map. And then another thing, the think quadrant captures what the user is thinking throughout the experience. You know, when people are using a product, like a digital product that we are focused on now, they think about things, you get. They think about things, they might be filling a form also, and then they get stuck somewhere, and they will be having a thought, and probably they might not want to share with you. So you could even ask them, oh, what are you thinking about? And I'd be surprised. So it could be things like, this is really annoying. You get, we also have this experience, the applications that we've used before, that is just so my target being annoying. I've shared this earlier in our introduction, that when I started using X, I didn't really like it much because of my other experience with other social media platforms. So like Facebook, which is very easy and just straight to the point. You see images you see comment inside, and then you can like a comment or comment on a post. Just very simple, not something too deep. Now, when I started using X way back many years ago, I discovered that X has this thread and loopholes, like an unending loop somehow. You get, so somebody will make a post, a tweet, and somebody will make a tweet, and then you can comment on that tweet and tweet post, and then somebody can comment on yours, and then somebody else can comment on that one that commented on yours. So the loophole was just like an unending for me, and it's somehow frustrating. So I didn't like the experience, you know. So when I'm using X and I'm alone, I will just have that thought, what I'm thinking. I'll be like, oh, this is confusing somehow. And then some people could have a thought like, maybe you get stuck at some point and you don't want to even ask people because you'll be thinking, is it that I don't understand this? Am I dumb for not understanding this level or this step, or what to do and what not to do? So if I ask somebody, would I be seen as someone that is dumb? Sometimes you could ask the people while they are testing your product, what exactly are you thinking? Do you need help? Are you confused about something? And they will share that thought with you, and it is a good thing to put this down, just jot it down, under what the user thinks while using that product to get. And then does also, the does quadrant closes the actions the users encloses the actions the user takes from the research. What does the user physically do? How does the user go about doing it? Sometimes you see some users, maybe they are stuck, they just refresh pages. These are things that you can observe and see what the user is physically doing, and shops around to compare prices. Now, so these are like other actions that users do. This could be like physically too. So these are a lot of things that is good for you to just take note of, and it will help you understand the user perfectly. And then the last is the feel. The feel quadrant is the user's emotional states, often represented as an adjective plus a short sentence for context. Ask yourself, what worries the user? What does the user get excited about? How does the user feel about the experience? You get, so people have different feel and different experience using products. It could be pages taking too long to load, so pages are too slow, you get, and some users are impatient, so you need to really know this. Some users are confused, too many contradictory prices. Now worry they are doing something wrong. You need to also know the feel of the users you are designing for a particular product, and all of this will help improve your design and make you design better, provide a solution to this. Just like pages load too slowly, of course there are solutions to all of these feel that are bad, like a bad UX experience. Too many contradictory prices, there are solutions to it, and not knowing what to do. That is why sometimes you see so many sites having tooltips, so many applications having tooltips. You hover over an item, just like this, you see a tooltip saying expand UI, control plus shift plus forward slash is like the shortcut for it. So it's tooltip. Somebody might be confused, what happens? I've hit this my left tab, how do I expand it? You might not know that if you click this it will expand, but when you hover over that icon, it tells you this, a tooltip will come up. So when you are worrying about something, whether something is wrong, there are solutions to all of this. So it's important that we take note of all of this, write a short note on them, on that particular user, and jot it down, so you make reference to this while you are refining your design. Correct? So user journey maps, we've covered user journey maps in our previous week, so we are going to skip that, but these are just tools that you have to use for your design thinking process, right? Empathy maps, we've just seen that. User journey maps, visualizing the end-to-end experience. How does the user get to point Z from point A? How does the user get to point D from point B? The map, the guideline. So if user is just landed on your website, how does the user get to contact us, right? So there should be journey maps for all of that. It's like I showed us this map and I said we'll skip it, but I just wanted to refresh our minds, right? So if you have a site and then you have like a tree, like a site tree, a tree format layout for your site. So you have the landing page. If you want to get to contact us on landing page, there's an arrow that takes you to contact us. There's an arrow that takes you to maybe catalog. There's an arrow that takes from the catalog. There's an arrow that will take you to products, and then you price, and all that is just user journey maps. And then the last is personas. Yeah. So personas are fictional but research back user profiles. Now, personas are just fictional personalities that you create. Yeah. And these fictional personalities are types of users that would use that product, or types of users that you are designing for, right? So let's say you are designing a religious book. Let's say the Bible. You are designing the Bible. Now, you need to create different personas for the different users that will use your Bible. You have young people using your Bible app. You have older people using the Bible app. And one thing I noticed is some of those, like the previous Bible app I've used, they have a majority of them have in their setting where you could increase the font size. Why? They thought of their user persona. What if they are using old people or people with any form of disabilities in their eyesight? So how do we help this user persona that will need the text to be bigger? You get? So now, okay, let's introduce a feature where you can increase the font size. Now, this is what user persona does for you. You need to create a fictional user. You can even give it a name, Musa, Adamu, and say, okay, Adamu is a Gen Z, or Adamu is an elderly person of 62 years old, and Adamu is going to be using this app. If I use this placeholder, if I use this input field where I just put a text inside, right, and say name. So this person, and yes, I just said name. That's the input field if you want to sign up. And once you start typing the name, the placeholder disappears, right? And he doesn't see any label. Will this older generation understand that this is still name you are trying to put in here? But if you consider the user persona, you say, okay, why don't I just have the placeholder here? It could be first name or whatever, I'm just using. Why don't I have a top placeholder for this? Because of this user. If it's a Gen Z might be too, the brain is still sharp, you get. So why don't I have this? Now you are doing this, you see how it's influencing your design because of the user persona that you've created. Oh, I have an elderly person that is going to use this app. So you need to create user personas also. All these are tools that support your design thinking process. And I just gave us a perfect example of it, right? So these are the things that we've seen in week 8. Week 8 design thinking process on how you start from interviews. You clearly have your problem statement. You ideate, you brainstorm to have multiple solutions. You prototype, you test, and then you go over it again if there is any need, right? And then we saw tools to support UX design thinking, right? Empathy maps, user journey maps, which we've treated in our previous weeks, and then user persona that I've just treated. So we'll be looking at our week 9 next. So see you then.